Okay, so we'll run through the pre-start and the start procedure in this TB20. So doors are secure, check that. Seats and belts, haven't got the belt on at the moment, just for an on-the-ground check like this. Passenger brief: in this aircraft we have a card that sits behind the seats which any passengers can read. Trims, we set that they are free and are set. Mobile phones off, that's a kind of modern hazard really. You don't want lots of ringing going on while they're at some critical moment. So we put the master switch on, the avionics master on, and that will enable us to listen to the ATIS. We check that the beacon is on, which warns anybody that we're thinking about starting. We can listen to the ATIS by putting the speaker on there. We always keep our ATIS on COM2, so I don't need to wait for the boxes to run through their test routine. The reason we need the ATIS is to get a start clearance for an IFR flight, and for a VFR flight, or for any flight, we want to know the runway in use and the QNH. We check that I'll get rid of that so it's not disturbing us. And we just check that we haven't popped any breakers. They're all down here you won't be able to see them, but they're down below my left knee on this aeroplane. And then we put the avionics master switch off, because in the start process we don't want to risk any spikes from the surges of the power damaging any of the avionics. So I'm covering the brakes with my toes. In this aeroplane it's a system that holds brake pressure, not very reliable, has a certain tendency for students to take off with the brakes still partly on, so we don't use them, we just cover them. We need to prime the engine, so the throttle is full, mixture rich, and the fuel pump goes on. We can see on the fuel flow the shade-in coming up until it stabilizes, and switch the pump off. The mixture in starting this sort of Lycoming engine and injected Lycoming comes back to idle cutoff. The throttle what's traditionally called cracked and is in about in that position, and we check outside to make sure nobody's in the way. Take the key, and this is one that starts on the key. You have to press as well as turn, nobody's around, and we start the engine. It's picking up, starter warning light is out, alternator goes on, alternator light goes out, avionics goes on, autopilot master, the Aspen display. Put the test onto the trim, and for a reason we'll explain later, you need 2 presses on the transponder. And then we can return to the checklist now, having done the memory items, to make sure that we've actually covered everything.